sort of going to be a show and tell. I'm just going to show you a lot of the tools that I currently use, a lot of tools I've used on other sites. I hope I can expand your QA capabilities with these tools. I think you're going to find a lot of them pretty cool. If you don't know me from yesterday morning at Slate, my name is Tom Gilmore. I am an open source consultant. I'm over at Evaluate to Win and Able Engineering right now. Done a number of other shops. Let's get to the agenda. I'm going to cover some open source web testing tools, some open source image-based testing tools, some behavior-driven open source tools. I'm going to talk briefly about handling test data for your test cases with DD unit. I'm going to talk about integration of Selenium and JS Error Collector. Now I'm going to get into some security tests, very high level security testing with OWASP and Selenium. Now I'm going to show you 3 different types of performance testing, which you probably should be doing in your organization if you're not doing it already. And then I'm going to roughly go over how to use JCoco with Selenium to get code coverage for your functional test tools. I'm going to show you a tremendous tool, code quality tool called Sonar. And I'm briefly going to cover plugins with Nexus, and I'm going to talk about basically how all this works in a CI environment with Hudson, Jenkins, and Maven. So I'm going to discuss briefly some of the open source web testing tools out there are Selenium. There's 3 different flavors. There's an IDE, your RC, and Core. Another one is hand in hand. A lot of people don't realize this, but the same guys who invented Selenium and Water worked at thoughtworks.com, so they're almost in parallel, 2 testing tools. And Water's a Ruby-based. WebDriver, which is, for any of you who don't know, Selenium, when you talk about Selenium today and you talk about Selenium 2.0, you're really actually talking about WebDriver. WebDriver is really what drives it now. Puppet here is a Google JavaScript unit testing tool that can integrate WebDriver, so WebDriver drives the tool for you. And then Jellyfish is an example of another JavaScript plugin. This is an actual driver that plugs into WebDriver, so just like WebDriver has IE, Firefox, whatever drivers, Jellyfish driver pops in, and if you initialize it, then you can start doing JavaScript testing, unit testing with it. So what do open source web testing tools do? They handle all mobile devices, Android, iOS. I can test with open source tools. I can handle Flash, Silverlight, multiple screens, mobile dialogues. I can actually do back-end testing if I integrate JDBC with my Selenium stuff. The drivers that are available are Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Ghost Driver, Safari, HTML unit driver, Android, and iOS. Good part with open source, language bindings galore. So if I want to use Selenium, I'm a .NET shop, fine. If I'm a Java shop, no problem. Python, whatever, they're all available. And they all work with the various unit formats, the NUnit, JUnit, TestNG, all of them.
Hey Tom, do you do mobile iOS testing with the simulator or on the devices?
iOS needs to use a Mac for it.
Yeah, just running the simulator.
Yep.
On that.
One of the tools, and this is one of my favorite tools, is a new tool that very few people out there are using. It's called Seculi. Seculi was developed by MIT. It's basically an image-based testing tool. The good points of it, it will test anything. Web, desktop, anything they can see, it'll test. It fully integrates into Water or WebDriver, so you can, when you're running, if you're a WebDriver shop or a Water shop, you can integrate it fully inside your test cases, so you can have a method, call it methods for WebDriver, and run those, and then call a method directly after that for Seculi, and we'll run it. That's about it. But it's a great tool because one of the problems with like WebDriver Selenium is, say I've got a test scenario where I want to do a file download. Well, WebDriver doesn't handle it because that's not a web-based application coming down. So Seculi, I can have Seculi take care of that for me. I use Seculi for things like help pages, about pages, EULAs, anything like that, because I can take a snapshot, have Seculi run, match that on the page, and tell me whether they match or not. So if there's been any changes to any of those things, saves you a lot of time manually instead of having to sit there every release going through all your help pages and everything. Just run your automated test with Seculi and it takes care of it for you.
driver for character recognition. So basically, now can recognize your mind. It can read text and it can convert it to text. So that was one of the things that, because it was image driving, and then you have a Internet Explorer or Firefox that have different same button, different
Yeah,
feature. But
when
if
you use
that,
when you use Seculi in like a high-level architecture with a WebDriver, what we do is when we open a page, go to a URL, we determine what OS that is, and by whatever OS that is, we tell which image library to use. So it'll go to an IE library, go to a Firefox library, whatever, grab the images from there.
But if you use that driver that recognize character, then you don't have to worry about the image because it reads the
Okay, now we'll talk about, a lot of people are familiar with behavior-driven automation tools. For any of you, basic behavior-driven development basically is, the first thing I'm going to do in a sprint is I'm going to do a mock-up of something. It's basically an outside-in approach. Create the mock-up, then create your test cases and start coding to that inward. What JBehave and Cucumber and Spinach are is basically, it allows you, a business interest, a product owner, whoever, can actually create scenarios and write them themselves. They're actually automated test cases. Go to the next page. So basically, your true user story scenarios and acceptance criteria truly become an actual automated test case. Okay, go to the next, I'll show you how this. So this is actually Seculi here, and on the left-hand side here, you can see my feature is addition. In order to avoid silly, so it's your story. Scenario, I'm going to add two numbers, and given I have entered 50 in the calculator, that line right there is an actual true test, automated test case inside of the Cucumber product. The Cucumber is written with a language called Gherkin, which is very English-like language. So the next line, and I have entered 70 in the calculator, and when I press add, then the result should be 120. Each of those lines is actually an automated test case. And what happens is, as you write these up as your scenarios and for user stories, as the developers or QA actually starts writing the actual test cases in the background, they're going to hook into, say, whether it's unit testing, whether it's WebDriver, or whatever, and as they start running, you'll then start seeing this over here as Cucumber runs. So you see the red here, given that I've entered 50. Basically, and you can't really see it, but it's basically throwing an exception, which is reading from, say, WebDriver. So it's not passing yet. And as they start passing, it'll all start turning green. So this way, a product owner can actually watch as the sprint goes along to see what's being developed and what's done.
So this can be hooked into Seculi, you said?
This can be hooked up, not to Seculi, but almost anything else. Any type of unit testing, any WebDriver, fitness. I haven't found anything out there other than commercial products that it won't hook into. And basically, this is what it's doing is, this is actually a WebDriver test case. And if you see the @given, they're basically hooks or wrappers in your WebDriver test code. So when that specific piece of your WebDriver test code runs and passes, it relays that back to the Cucumber test case and tells it I passed or I failed, and either become green or red. And so basically what the whole basic concept of this is, it allows you to split your development process into almost a 50-50 with your business interest and your development side. Your business interest folks can actually write up the test case. And if you think about it, if you're a shop where you're not getting much in the way of acceptance criteria, this is a good way to try to get a product owner to give you some good acceptance criteria when they're writing out the test cases themselves.
Which one do you prefer?
I use Cucumber, but they're almost identical. There's small difference in all of them. That's it. And JBehave was the base beginning one. Dan North wrote, and then he wrote with a couple of his Cucumber, which is sort of an addition to it, and then Spinach is a newer one that's come on the scene, but they're all pretty much the same. One of the things which I always emphasize to people when you're doing automation, a lot of automation is about your test data. You can have the greatest tool in the world, but if you go to test and you don't have stable data, your automation is basically not going to work long term. And what we do is we use DB Unit, which basically we'll set up a data the way we want it. We know everything is in the correct setting for our test cases. We'll take a snapshot with DB unit, which puts it in an XML file. So each time we do a build, Maven will kick off a DB unit, which will load all that data for us. So when we go to run our automated test cases, we know the state of all the test data at that point. Now I'm talked about, basically, this is basically what I'll add on, and let me briefly talk. One of the great things about open source is understanding the concept of plugins. And that's what makes open source so great is, basically, I can take different frameworks, different drivers, through plugins and integrate them to create a process that works for your particular organization. And one of the things I'm going to show you here is, this is JS Error Collector. What JS Error Collector does, it logs any JavaScript errors that are thrown when your WebDriver test cases are running. And when they're running, you'll see on the upper right-hand corner this JS Error Collector, and it'll start counting them. At the end of the test suite, what happens is, it will JS Error Collector and will grab all the errors from WebDriver, and we'll then dump them into a text file for you. And that text file will show you each of the errors. It'll tell you what the error was, what the JavaScript file was, and what line it actually occurred on. So you can then take that file and actually turn it over to your UI guys and have them write up fix all the JavaScript errors. And the best part of this, most of these errors you'll never see when you're running your test manually or automated, but it's seeing it for you. And this is an example. This is what it would print out to the text file. So you'd have your error up here. This would tell you where, so it'd be the require.js, it's throwing the error, and it's at line 7. Okay, one of my favorite subjects is security testing. There's a tremendous tool from OWASP. OWASP, for you, most of you don't know, is Open Web Application Security Project. It's a charitable organization. They develop security testing tools that are free, open source for anybody. They have very good documentation on the site. They have a lot of information, monthly information on logs, discussions on specific subjects and everything on security, so it's a great tool. Best part of all, it fully integrates with WebDriver and most open source web testing tools. The specific tool that I like to use is called the Z-Attack Proxy. And what a Z-Attack Proxy does is when I have my server where I'm running my web applications at, or automated test cases at it, and I run it against a web server, Zeb sits as a proxy in the middle and intercepts all the traffic going back and forth, and then collects all that data. And as we go on, I'm going to show you what it does with that data after it collects it. Like I said, it's easy to use integrated penetration testing tool, finding vulnerabilities in web applications. It's ideal not only for developers, but most functional testers should have some idea how to use something like this. And it's perfectly set up to run in conjunction with Selenium, your regression test. So I'm going to show you some of what it does. After it's collected all of your information, and if you look at the tool, you're going to see a breakdown of all the pages it's gone to. And then the first thing you're going to run is it's got a spider built into it. So I'm going to run the spider, and the spider's going to go out against all these pages and requests that it's seen, and it's going to look for any additional pages or anything else that posted requests that are sitting out there that it hadn't found yet. Once I run that, I'm going to kick off active scanning. I'm not going to list everything here, but active scanning runs a large list of attacks against every single page, every request, and some of those include SQL injection. So it's going to run all these attacks against all your pages for you. It will also check for cross-site forgery attacks if you're vulnerable to it. Runs a brute force, so it's basically going to attempt to force its way into any of your files or directories that it's seen. And fuzzing. And fuzzing basically is where I send a large amount of data to like an request or something and see how it actually handles it. Go to the next one. It also does, which I talked about, the spider, which basically goes out and searches around for anything that's available out there. Port scan. It's going to look at your box where your application's running, and it's going to scan for any open ports that are sitting out there and report those back to you. And it will also tell you any of the known ports. If it's an HTTP port or whatever, it's going to tell you what it is, but then it's going to list ports that are open, but we're not sure what it's being used for, so you may want to check into those. The nice part of the ZEP is there's soon to be a Maven plugin for it, but the nicer part is they're actually going to include this in Selenium Grid. So what will happen is when you spin up Selenium Grid with your Selenium test cases, there will actually be a node there that will run against ZAP. And the nice part is you don't have to set up all the proxy stuff in your test code for Selenium that way. Before I leave OWASP, what OWASP, after I run all of these attacks against it, the nice part is it's going to print out a HTML report for you. Everything that's found, whether it's a minor, major, critical, or a warning, it's going to print out every one of those. It's going to tell you what the exact issue is it found. It's going to tell you where it found it, and it's going to tell you exactly how to fix it. So it's a great report, and we basically run this at the end of our sprints, and if we're any critical stuff, we hand this off to our developers for them to look into. Okay, one of the things we do, which is a little different than most places on performance testing, you know, you've got your different performance testing. You'll hear stress testing, load testing, blah, blah, blah. We break it into 3 phases, basically. We performance test our front end. We use JConsole to look at what's happening as we're running our web test cases. And then we use JMeter to do load and stress testing. The front end testing, we use Selenium, PAR, NetExport, Firebug to accomplish this. And then JConsole is another open source tool. It's looking at your Java virtual machine and seeing what's happening as the test cases are running. And I'll have demos here and after this to show you specifically what it's doing. Go to the next one. And then JMeter, another open source tool. It's designed for load, functional behavior, and measure performance. Let's look at the examples. Okay, this is our front end testing. This is what we use. We have a specific set of WebDriver Selenium test cases that go through our product, each page. And after it goes through each page, using NetExporter and Firebug and HAR, it kicks off a HAR file to a directory we've selected. And what this HAR file is doing is, each page, and this is one page here, every single element that gets loaded on that page, it gives us a time for it, it tells us what it was, and what it disallows you. And then if you look at the top, we'll have 2 things. We're going to have onload, which means actually loading the physical elements onto the page, and a total load, which it takes into account weights. So this is a tremendous tool because most places are out there going, oh, we do load, stress testing. Okay, we handle any of our hardware issues with the performance testing. But your product still takes, your screen takes 5-6 seconds to load. I'm not under stress. Why is that happening? This is where you find out. And as you can see, an example we had is a cache busting here. We had a screen that was taking almost 12 seconds to load. We couldn't figure out why. So we went into this and we realized we were running cache busting twice on it. One of them was taking 4 seconds to load, one was taking 5 seconds to load. After our developers looked at it, they realized, hey, number 1, we were pointing at the wrong cache busting, and number 2, we should have never run it twice. So we got down to about a 1 second running, looking up that page.
So again, proxy driven?
No.
So it has to be on the platform you're running the page.
Yeah, it's my WebDriver test cases. There's code in it that basically, as it goes to each page, it works with Firebug and NetExporter to grab this HAR file out of there and then dump it into a directory for me. And then this is JConsole. So basically what we will do is, as we're running our full regression, we'll actually be sitting here monitoring this, and it'll also print out a report for you. But we can see that if we've gone into one of our pages, and when class is opened up and that class is not releasing, we realize that we're showing it right here, and we go, oh, we got a problem, we need to go look into that. And this is great because we actually use this on the cloud, so we're using Amazon Cloud, so we a special feature on your application, whatever. I can write a test case that will loop through as many times as I tell it to, with as many users as I tell it to, and the amount of users you use depends on how many normally how many slaves you're running with this, because you're going to type a lot of your memory if you're running 1,000 individuals through it on one box. But basically, this will come back, run through this set for us, and then it'll print out, and we'll see if, number one, if we had any errors, which we had, didn't. It's going to give us standard deviation, the min-max, time going through, and average time going through. So it's a great tool, very easy to use. Works with Selenium. You can use Selenium test cases in it to run, but we don't. In this case, we have to write our own test cases in JMeter. Again, very good documentation for using JMeter of how to use it, how to set it up. If you're not doing any type of performance testing for your application, you really should be doing something. Okay, one of the tools we use, and this is how we determine what we should automate. We run, it's called the JCO plugin, and what it does is as our regression test face is running through, there is JCO agent, which is a jar file sitting on the web server, and it's analyzing what class Java files we're hitting. And then once we finish up, the next tool I'm going to go to will print it out onto a Sonar, and it's going to tell us you had 60% code coverage. And from there, I can actually drill down into my classes and into the lines of code, and it'll mark and tell me what you have not covered and what you have covered code-wise. And then what you basically want to do then is go back. If I've got an area where I'm going, I've got 10% code coverage, go back, work with your developer, figure out what is this area, what does it do, and how can I test it, and work with the developer on that. JCO will also do unit testing code coverage for you, so if you're using Sonar, you can use JCO for both, or you can use Cogatura for unit testing and JCO for your automated test cases. And this is what you'll see on the Sonar site, is you'll see integration, and from there, those are links you can click on, and it'll start digging all the way down to the actual lines of code. And this is what you'll actually see as you get all the way down. It's red basically telling you you have no code coverage there. So you need to figure out what those lines do in that class, to figure out then how to write a test case to actually exercise that area. Okay. For those of you who don't know and aren't using, Sonar is probably one of the best open source tools of any kind that's on the market today. It's basically a code quality, basically, it's hard to describe this. Sonar is basically sort of a platform that has a large amount of plugins that you can put into it to record on basically anything. So it's a matter of what you want to see when you run Sonar. Sonar reports on the 7 axes of code quality, coding rules, comments, potential bugs, complexity, unit tests, duplications, and architecture and design. Can we pull up Sonar real quick on here? Over here on the far right. There you go. All the way up. This is Sonar. And again, I want to emphasize a few things on it. What you see here is, there's two things you have to do. Number one, you would have to pull in the plugin in the admin portion and set up that plugin to see any of these. And then determining what you see on your screen is when you're logged as an admin, you will see configure widgets, which will allow you to specify on your page here what you actually want to see on it as far as the plugins. Another good part about it is I can go in here and create specific screens for like management, for development, or for QA, depending on what they want to see. So why is this a great tool? Number one, being QA, you want to be proactive. So I run this after every build, and it's telling me, first line here, I've got 4.2% duplications. Well, the nice part is as a QA, I go, well, why do we want all these duplications? I can dig down to those actual lines of code, and because this, if you're using a Jira site, I can right-click on that piece of code that's duplicated, create a Jira ticket, and Sonar runs, it's running Find Bugs, which is a code quality tool basically, and looks at standard practices for your coding. And in this case, it found 3,136 violations. Then breaks them into critical, major, minor. So if you have something critical there, again, go to it, it'll dig you all the way down to it, write up a defect in JIRA for your developer to fix it. And the nice part for developers is there's an Eclipse tool, so they can just open this defect all the way straight into their Eclipse, fix it, and check it back in right there on the spot. Keep going down. There's 3 different tools on here, and they all have a little stuff right there. Total quality. It measures your total quality of your application. And you can see it basically measures architecture, your design, your testing, your code. You can actually go into the setup, and you can play with these a little if you want to switch it up a little, but it's a great indicator of what kind of quality you're creating with your code. Code coverage, stop right there. This would normally, we just upgraded Sonar, so I haven't put in the where the path to the code coverage is, but this is unit testing code coverage, and as you can see, 100% passed. And if I had the path into the thing, it would have told me you have X amount of code coverage on your application if I had the path set up in there right now. Security violations, another one. It goes in, looks, you can dig all the way down. Again, if you've got a major security violation, take that up and send it to your development to fix it. Technical debt, your management team can set up technical debt for your project if they wish to. Maintainability model is another code quality index for you. Some things I don't have here, which Sonar will directly hook into JIRA. So if I have a JIRA project associated with this project, I can report all the JIRA stuff directly onto Sonar for me. JMeter, if I'm running JMeter, all the JMeter stuff will show up on Sonar for me. Maven, all your Maven reporting, I can have that show up on Sonar for me. And like I said, there's numerous plugins in Sonar that you can go add to this. It's just a matter of what works for you. What kind of metrics are you looking for? And like I was saying, this is a great tool because some of these reports you're seeing here, they may not mean anything to quality assurance, but they do mean something to development, and some of them really mean something to management. Sonar is its own tool, but because it's an open source, it is a plugin. So it's a plugin for it into Jenkins or Hudson, Bamboo, any of them.
But it doesn't stand alone, so I can just download it on.
No, it actually would need to run either Jenkins or something to actually build your software so it can get all the measurements. And what it's really doing is it's letting Maven do all the hard work. So Maven generates all this code and stuff and all these reports. And then at the end, you'll see Sonar kick off, and you'll see each of the plugins running. And what those plugins are really doing is they're going to wherever Maven or Jenkins has stored something, they're grabbing the data it needs and doing its measurements and then reporting it back to Sonar for you. One of the tools out there which we couldn't get along with is Nexus. Nexus is a plugin repository. So if we're using something like Sakuli, Puppeteer, Epsilon, some of the Epsilon libraries, whatever, somehow, some way, we need, because they're not Maven plugins at this point, we need to make those available to our testing structure. So we create our own repositories in Nexus. And then when Maven runs, Maven goes and grabs all those repositories out of Nexus, which then makes all those jar files and libraries available to us when we're running our test cases. But Nexus has additional capabilities. After each release build, we will store all of our WAR files inside of Nexus. So the nice part is, if I need to go back to an old release, I need to take a look at something, I can grab that WAR file off and spin it up on a server and take a look at what I need to look at. Any code sharing that you do, because it's a centralized repository that everybody's using. That way you don't have to worry about, well, developer A is using this version of something and developer B is on this version. You don't have that because of Nexus. The other nice thing is if you're a Maven shop, instead of having Maven repositories scattered all over the place, every Maven setup you have will run and pull from Nexus instead of having its own repository. So this is basically what Nexus looks like when you log in. And all of these things are the public repositories, and as the one I have highlighted, Enable Nexus releases and Enable Access snapshots. These are our internal repositories we've created, so that's where our Seculi and Log4j and other things like that would actually, jar files would sit so that Maven can go grab them. The nice part too is, if you're familiar with Maven, plugins are constantly updating. So one of the ways you can also check is Maven or Nexus allows you and will notify you when there's an upgrade to a plugin, and then you can manage it here and determine, do I want that new one or do I not want that new one? And in this case, this is our releases, and as you can see, this Seculi script, this is the repository we created where we have our Seculi jar file, which Maven will then go grab. So we particularly use Jenkins, but for most of you don't know, Jenkins and Hudson are basically the same thing. It's just there was a little tiff with Oracle on naming rights, so the guy who I forget the name, that created Hudson went off on to create Jenkins, and it's basically sort of a clone, basically. So when I say Jenkins Hudson, I'm basically talking about the same thing. We use it to set up our build process. We use it to configure Selenium Grid, and the best part is we can set up multiple projects for our automated testing. So in our case, on check-in, we'll run only our smoke test, but then we'll have another project at midnight that can run all of our automated test cases. And if we haven't seen this in Jenkins, then these are each individual projects that are on this particular instance in Jenkins. I guess one of the ways I would describe Maven and Jenkins, because they're sort of hand in hand, I think of it as sort of like a symphony. Jenkins would be your conductor. He's going, okay, start, okay, you compile now, you deploy now, you run unit test. Maven, actually the one, it's like the musicians, they're doing all the actual work in the background. Jenkins is just sort of conducting things.
So maybe it works with Hudson as well.
And Maven, big thing about understanding Maven is it's controlled by a pom.xml file, which is basically a step-by-step instructions, and also tells it what dependencies to use, and for each individual plugin, it tells it what you want it to do. We use the run integration test phase for our automated test. It also kicks off our code coverage in Sonar. And let's go to the next one. This is a specific plugin. This is our integration test phase plugin. And the pom.xml file, you see it on most, it's math, it goes on forever. But in this particular case, I'm telling it to run the integration test phase. At the bottom here, you can see these are all different test suites that I'm telling this particular instance to run. I'm bumping up the perm gen on this case for it, and I'm in the goal is the verify phase, which means to run the test cases. And that was it for what I'm going to cover. And one of the things I'm going to point out to you is the things there, we cover all of these tools I've shown you, but in detail during our Selenium Users Group meetings. So if you wanted to learn more about Sonar and actually how to set it up, you should show up at the meetings. If you want to know more about Selenium WebDriver, show up at the meetings. We do walkthroughs, and generally we'll give you the code and actually how you actually set it all up. So if you show up, we'll teach you actually how to do all this stuff. And we have a monthly meeting normally. It's free to join. Provide food and beverages there, and you will generally find that a large portion of the people show up. Some of the people we have at PayPal and some others who use all these tools, so they're very willing to help you out if you need help trying to figure out how to use these tools. Okay, any questions on any of these tools?
Well, this is tools that code mostly for Java, but if your development is in .NET, is any
Anything I've shown you there will work across the board on any languages.
because
The only one specific ones would be,
JUnit.
yeah, Java and stuff like that, but Sonar, Jenkins, Maven, any of them.
Well, I was trying to play with Maven one day, and only was for Java, and there was one initiative in the community to make a plugin for .NET, but there was nothing there yet.
Basically, here's what happens with open source tools, basically, is most of them, not all, but most of them are initially developed for Java. As they're developed, somebody comes along and says, I'm a .NET person. Okay, I'm gonna expand on it, then make it available now to .NET, Python, whatever, down the line. But normally you're first developed as Java. But Maven, you should be able to run Maven on .NET.
You could also, with what Maven does, you could use the build definitions in Visual Studio TFS to do the build portions of Maven, to get the loading of required files. That's now covered under NuGet, and that will also maintain your dependencies and the versioning for it there. So there are analogs also in the TFS.NET world.
Don, the shared presentation will be available on the site.
Yes. Any other questions?
Just asking, does anybody have any automation with PDFs or other type of print that validate?
We use Seculi for that.
Seculi for
Yeah,
that?
our help files are, well, it used to be PDF, but not anymore. But we use Seculi for that.
Is it like an XY? Is that what it, I mean, to
No,
validate the data?
It takes an actual screenshot of your file,
Expectation?
and then depending on how much you want to verify, 100% on down, it's going to look at it and say, is this a correct match or not?
Okay.
Could you tell me more about net export? What is that about?
Net export, first tell you, Firebug is an add-on for Firefox.
Right.
Net exporter is an add-on for Firebug that allows you to do networking. So what you saw in the HAR file that I showed you is actually what you see in net export. The difference is what I'm doing is, instead of having to look at it in net export, I'm dumping it into an actual HAR file on its own, so I can look in the HAR viewer then. But yeah, net exporter works with Firebug basically to allow you to monitor network traffic.
Like how a log page works. And Seculi, does that scan image files and export, can it export the data on that PDF into like a text file or an XML? Did you say something about XML?
Seculi does, I have not, because I have not used it, but I do know it has an option to actually copy and paste. So it should be able to copy and paste anything on a
Whether it can
PDF
parse
file.
or not, who knows.
Yeah, that's what.
There's probably a way to do that. You would have to start breaking down the document format and understanding that, but you could make
Well,
that
there-
happen.
I can't point you at. There is some code out there for AutoIt that will do that.
Yeah.
AutoIt will do that.
AutoIt.
Yeah. AUTOIT.
I've
So-
heard of a couple of tools out there that'll do PDF scans.
And if anybody, any other tool you're looking for, I mean, these are just a fraction of the ones I
Yeah.
use. So you know, you're looking for something specific, just ask me, and I could probably point you to where to find it at.
Another question, when you run these tools, do they take memory and CPU from the process that are running? I mean, when you run your program and then start running tools at the same time, make it.
Well, we have to, like the perm gen for like Jenkins, we have to bump that up. We run into issues once in a while with that.
Yes, they're going to consume extra memory for whatever process you're doing,
Yeah.
because they are still running code running on the machine. You're adding more code, so adding more processes. So yeah, it's going to take more resources.
Yeah, and I mean, an example, if you're running Exchange and you're doing your build process and you decide to run all your automated tests on the same box and have other VMware images all run at the same time, yeah, you're going to run into some problems. So you're going to have to sort of determine where you're going to space this stuff out, where you want to run it at.
Have you ever used any of these tools instead of for testing actual automation and production to eliminate FTEs type thing, work like a Foxtrot or
So
anything like
Cooley
that?
will do that for you.
Yeah, I would think
If you go to the Cooley site, you'll see a lot of